Hi there. This is my final revision update to the House of the Dragon Season 2 episode by episode outline. I know I'm putting this out at the last minute, no frills, there aren't a lot of pictures in it, it's mostly me reading off text. But right before the final trailer dropped, I made a pretty succinct, a little more than 15 minutes outline of, based on following filming reports for 2 years, this is everything we can make an informed speculation about what's in episode by episode. And I said I was going to update it after the final trailer. And I didn't get around to it because there was a lot of other news in place. And also, well, two things. There are two reasons why this is last minute and not a lot of features in it, which I hope you can all agree with in the comments. First, time I wanted to spend on a really detailed shot-by-shot lineup reconstructing episodes using new trailer shots, that time was officially spent on the Nettles crisis. 3 large videos. The day the final trailer came out, there was this leak that Nettles might not be in it. Had a report on that. Then, more behind-the-scenes info, I came back and said, actually, while a reasonable person should be afraid that Nettles is out, I'm starting to think she might not be. We can't disprove she's in it. And then the third one, that I think actress Tuso Mbedu actually is Nettles. And I've updated this officially from other things I've heard behind the scenes of rumors if she was on set or not. I no longer think that, oh, well, there's a chance she'll show up in Season 3. It's one of two things. Either she's cut, or at the very end of Season 2, we will get like 1, maybe 2 scenes as a cameo to tease setting up next season that Tuso Mbedu, who's a major actress, will appear as Nettles in the finale, and that's actually what I think is going to happen. And I talked about that in the other videos, so that is officially where the time went, and given a choice, I would have done that again. A major crisis like, is Nettles even in the show or has she been cut, is more important than a speculative season outline, which will be out of date eventually. Second thing is, the final trailer didn't really give us much new information, so I didn't feel the need to rush out a big update at the time. It was just better shots of things. And I said that at the time, I made a trailer breakdown video, so if you kind of functionally had that update, if you watched the episode by episode outline and then, like 2 or 3 days later, and here's my breakdown of the trailer, I pretty much said everything I would need to say, that making a shot-by-shot reconstruction of this is what's happening in episode 2 or something, that would have just been a bonus. More than really conveying information. It would have been too speculative. The standout things in the new trailer I did discuss in a video. Maybe 90% of that new trailer footage was stuff from the first 4 episodes, which we already have a pretty decent outline for. And another thing is, my first outline video turned out better than I thought it would, due to a combination of, we didn't actually get that much new shots in the final trailer, and I managed to make an outline in a little over 15 minutes, because I said, this is the rushed, abridged version, so more people could watch it than this really long, full-hour breakdown. So, being succinct is hard, and I think that was a really successful video. It's better than I thought it would be. So I can't really improve on this in terms of its succinctness. Then anything else would be like, think of time as a finite resource, return on investment. I could spend a full day making an hour-long video, slowly going through what are basically just different angles of the same shots we got in the teaser trailers, which we can't really confirm anyway, that it wouldn't be conveying new information. There weren't really that many shots of new characters in any trailers, even by the final trailer. A couple of major new characters we don't even have images for. It's very surprising how little the marketing campaign featured any of the new characters. And if you're going to say, well, that might imply that some of them aren't really prominent, no, it's like ones we know from descriptions are very prominent in Season 2. Like, well, to start with, we only have essentially one good still shot of Kragan Stark, where, and it's, it's like a GIF image, but it's him walking towards camera in one set on the wall. That's it. And we also got, it's basically a promo still, just, and we do have one actual promo still of Jane Arryn, because their social media put it out early by accident and then just ran with it. That, okay, this is what Jane Arryn looks like, but it's not particularly revealing other than, okay, she's in full costume. One Kragan, one Jane Arryn. And again, you could make the argument that means they're not in the season that much, but then we know Alan of Hull has a lot of scenes with Corlys or Adam of Hull, the Hull brothers, or Alicent's brother Gwaine, who we know is, well, he's sharing scenes with other characters, at least. Even if he's not that big of a role, he's in the room with people. Like how Bronn would be in the room with Tyrion in terms of raw screen time, not necessarily size, but they're not putting out images of them. And again, the argument that, well, maybe they're not putting out Dragon Seed images because their identity is kind of a reveal. It's a secret that we know Hugh Hammer is in this season quite a bit, but they haven't been focusing on him in their marketing campaign because it's kind of a secret that there's these Targaryen bastards that they're going to recruit. I get that. So whether Kragan and Jane are in it a lot, or we can't say who Targaryen bastards are, but then Gwaine Hightower, why wouldn't you just have him in scene? And there's like one shot of him in a trailer, that's it. But the one that really gets me, just putting all this to, no, you officially just didn't want to hype up new characters. Alice Rivers. We haven't had a single shot of Alice Rivers in a trailer or promo images, even though she was one of the first cast members announced. In fact, there was only one official set of casting announcements for like a year when they started filming April 2023. Every other casting thing we got, all other casting info from then till spring of 24 was from spy leaks, not official statements that they said, hey, Alice Rivers, Gale Rankin, and plus here is Alan of Hull. Then never put out any official images of them. Now, recently we got Alan of Hull images, one or two. There's one close-up of him in the trailer and a better still photo of him with Corlys at the docks. It's one of the promo still images, but Alice Rivers, you'd think they would put out like a basic shot of this is what she looks like in costume, and they didn't. Which is very strange, and also combined, it's frustrating we didn't even get spy photos of her. So when we see her in the show, it'll be a reveal for me and the spy community as much as all you guys. And we know from the advanced reviews that just came out, she actually is pretty prominent in Daemon's storyline at Harrenhal, so they just didn't want to emphasize the new characters, I guess. Anyway, this is my short, last-minute, final revision that if there was more to say, I would have rushed it out sooner. I had to deal with the Nettles crisis. Those two things are what slowed me down. This is my final last-minute speculative episode-by-episode outline. It is an update to the big report, which this is all the culmination of all the filming reports for 2 years. That as opposed to clickbait, which it is shameful when you do things like say, oh, without evidence, I heard a rumor, which you're making up, that, oh, Jace and Kragan are having an affair, or Jace marries Sarah Snow, when I've openly said I want that to be a plot, but we're starting to think Sarah Snow has been cut. Or even just baiting people with, oh yeah, there's going to be an Alicent Rhaenyra sex scene. That is deeply irresponsible, even if you pretend it's a rumor you heard. I'm trying to present evidence, or definitely the Battle of the Gullet must be in the season finale or something. We're not really sure what's in the finale at this point. It could, I doubt it. We don't have evidence, so I can't really say, because I don't want to report on what I want to be true. So this is an update to that, and there's actually two big factors which updated this. Not from the trailer, but from just in the past week, the advanced reviews, that they had the advanced screenings for critics, the early New York City premiere, the Paris premiere, the London premiere. So now all the news sites are making allegedly spoiler-free reviews. They've signed NDAs, but you can still glean information from that they let slip. Okay? That you can glean information from those. And on top of that, it wasn't just the first episode, that the people they invited to the screenings, to the showings of those things, like the major news outlets, Vulture, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, they gave them screener copies of the first 4 episodes, 4 out of 8. And we already knew, just everyone knew, that episode 4 is the Battle of Rook's Rest. From very prominent spy photos, we knew who's directing it. We knew, that isn't even a leak anymore, that Rook's Rest is episode 4. So we've been getting descriptions of the first half of the season. Now, the issue is, if you watched my first outline, I said, luck of the draw. Luck of the draw, because they film out of order. We managed to get most of our leaks from the first 4 episodes anyway. But the second half of the season, we know very little about. Well, episode 7, there was a script leak, so we know quite a bit about episode 7, but episodes 5, 6, and 8, we knew very little about. And because the screeners only got the first half of the season, there's been no change to that. We know very little about what's happening. That I don't know what's happening in episode 6. More than anything else. 5, you can kind of guess, is the aftermath or reactions to Rook's Rest, but 6 and 8, we really don't know. And we can't even figure it out from context, so I wouldn't be able to give an update for that anyway, which is why I didn't rush it out. And retroactively, turns out I would have had to throw out, if I was doing a really detailed scene by scene, and this is clearly the final shot of episode 1, I was wrong. Well, slightly, like, end of 1 is really the beginning of 2, and vice versa. What I thought was 2 was really 3. I was off by 1 episode in either direction. And I'm not really concerned about, if I'm off by 1 episode, I don't mind, because it's not about, I'm exactly proving it's in this specific episode, but it's more, is it in season 2 at all? Is the real question I was worried about. Like, if Sarah Snow turned out to be in season 2, I wouldn't care if it was episode 6 or 8 or whatever. So there have been some last-minute updates from that and other leaks with the Nettle stuff, which updated everything. All of this was just context up to now, and I'm doing this essentially as a podcast. That I did a text-based write-up of this in the Westeros.org forum, in the House of the Dragon section, and I'm just reading it off. There were 2 key changes to the outline that's going into this update, and they're all things in the first half of the season. First, it seems that Jace barely spends any time in the North with Cregan Stark, which is a pretty big change in terms of the ripple effect of, and I said this is speculative, every episode we didn't know much about, I say we know they're expanding the Northern storyline because we saw all sorts of things, which is hard to reconcile now, and I said maybe the North stuff is mostly in episodes 3 and 6. I was wrong. Advanced reviews confirm, they stated this, that Cregan Stark, in the first half of the season at least, because we don't know what's in the second half, only appears in 1 sequence. And it's a very long sequence. It's this big, like, 10-minute long prologue. It's the prologue, very prominently, the very first thing we see. In my original outline, I thought the opening shot is ravens come to Winterfell bringing news Viserys died, to tease the Starks are coming, and then Jace would arrive at Winterfell the end of episode 2, and then the full introduction of the Starks would be episode 3. That's not true. What we've now confirmed is the ravens going to Winterfell is the first shot of the season, but they're bringing news that Luke died. And then it's like, the way it's described, it's voiceover montage that the raven comes to Winterfell, brings the news, and at Winterfell you see young men newly recruited into the Night's Watch departing for the Wall from Winterfell. So there's this trailer shot that we did have of the Watch traveling on a road at night. I wondered if is that going to the White Walkers or something. That's this new batch of recruits just going from Winterfell to the Wall, while Cregan is giving this big voiceover. And they bring the letter with them. And then the voiceover continues, you go to the wall, follow the elevator up with the camera, and then the voiceover syncs up with, and now you see him talking in real time to Jace on top of the wall, as we saw in the trailer. And this whole thing, then there's a long scene of them talking on top of the wall. It's not a short scene, but this whole thing of the voiceover from Winterfell to the wall, then talking to Jace, 5-10 minutes, this is the one time Cregan actually appears this season. Like, I don't think we ever even see Jace physically in the Winterfell set. Now, all this is very confusing because why did they go to the trouble of building a fully realized set for the top of the wall? Or Ryan Condal repeatedly said, we built a Winterfell set that I was walking around in. They could have used a digital set. This is the whole thing with Storm's End last season. That Storm's End was a digital set because they realized we're not going to use it that much. So you could argue maybe they built these things thinking they'd get more use out of them in later seasons, but then you'd use the budget for a later season on that. Why take away stuff from now? I have some vague hope that maybe the narrative will go back to Cregan at Winterfell in episode 6 or something, simply because we don't know what's happening in episode 6, but Jace won't be going back, so the Sarah Snow stuff isn't in it. So I used that to fill in the gaps in my knowledge, and it turns out I was wrong. It's all in the beginning, and that's it. And this is the one sequence that we actually see of Jace's trip north to other kingdoms. So he mentions he went to the Vale, but you'd never see him meeting Jane Arryn. He just describes it. And this one scene with Cregan. And why would they go to the trouble of building a Winterfell set? I'm not really sure. And like Tom Taylor, the Cregan actor, said in a recent interview, I only filmed atop the wall for 3 days. It's possible those were his only 3 days this season. Though maybe he has scenes at Winterfell or Beyond the Wall if he comes back later in season 2, but there's no reason to think he does. Just that vague hope. So I'm not too angry because Cregan lives to... Okay, this is the full spoilers outline if you didn't know already, for book readers or spoiled people. Cregan lives to be a very old man. So he would be in like every season of the show, like through season 8 if they go through Regency stuff. So, yeah, okay, they're teasing him now, he'll have more later, I'm fine with that. Well, I said there were 2 key changes to my outline. That was the most far-reaching one, because anytime there's an episode where we didn't have much info, I just speculated, and I said I speculated, maybe Jace's storyline in the North takes up a lot of this episode. Turns out it doesn't. But the second major update of the 2 actually isn't from screeners, but from reliable leak sources I've used in the past who turned out to be right, which line up pretty well with other info, so I trust it. Second point is that Rhaena actually goes to the Vale in episode 3, not episode 7 as I originally thought. Now, that leak about Rhaena in episode 7 in the Vale was true, it's just I didn't understand the context. It was a leaked filming sheet that it turns out it wasn't of her riding with her entourage arriving at the Eyrie, they were leaving the Eyrie. I think they were like going to the Bloody Gate to the assembly point for all the Vale's armies or something, that kind of thing, but they were going somewhere else in the Vale, so they were leaving the Eyrie in that episode. That makes more sense. So it turns out she actually goes there in episode 3. This is actually good news because originally I thought Jane Arryn would only be in literally one episode, episode 7. Now there's at least 2, where she has to have an arrival episode at least, and then the episode 7 one. And it makes sense, this lines up with the other things that came out, the confirmed point I'll get to in a minute, that Cargill Bowl actually is the final scene of episode 2. Logically, they'd go, well, now we need to send the younger children along with Joff and his dragon to the Eyrie for their protection in case the Greens send more assassins to Dragonstone. And they do explain. We've seen other reviewers say Jane Arryn said we have to send her at least one dragon, so they send Joff on Dyraxes, and after Cargill Bowl, they go, we might as well send Rhaena and Aegon the Third with her and stuff. So this is good, and also it's even better, even if she's in only 2 episodes. Having, if they're spaced out as episodes 3 and 7, that's better than like a back-to-back 6 and 7. Because if they're back-to-back, the implication when episodes are like 3 or 4 apart in a season is that time has passed off screen. Like, what I mean is, hypothetically, if Rhaena came to the Vale in episode 6, then in episode 7 they said, oh, 2 months have passed off screen, in which I have developed this deep mentor relationship with Jane Harren, it would seem a bit rushed. But the same amount of raw screen time if you space those scenes apart. So she arrives in episode 3, then they say off-screen months passed 4 episodes later. It's a little more believable that, okay, to the viewer, spacing out content across multiple episodes gives more of an implication of time passing. Because even if you just say in dialogue, I've seen shows that have done this, oh, well, 2 months passed off screen, it still feels rushed. But at least 2, maybe more, that we are going to be going to the Vale in episode 3, and then this other big scene in episode 7. Though I must say, I'm not sure, the way it was phrased is she goes to the Vale in episode 3. I'm not sure if that means we see her arriving in the Vale, or we just see her departing. But either way, they'd need an arrival scene in like episode 4 or 5, because episode 7 they'd suddenly be leaving to go somewhere else that doesn't make sense. So those are the 2 big points. We lost a lot of what we thought would be an expanded Jace in the North thing. And I kind of hope that because we don't know what's in the second half of the season, there's a small chance that we'll see Cragen Stark doing stuff with the Night's Watch in episode 6, simply because we don't know what's happening after episode 4. Like, episode 6 is a blank to us, but Jace probably wouldn't be in it. So we lose the Sarah Snow stuff there. Maybe she'll be in it, but just not attracted to Jace because he isn't in the North at the time. I don't know. I'm happy to get more Jane Eyre stuff, though. They said we tried to frame the story around the POV characters of the Targaryen family, and if you think about it, well, okay, first Rhaena is the POV and Joff, and Jane is family. She's Rhaenyra's maternal cousin, so it's a little more, okay, we're all family, this is tied together, versus, now let's see what the Tyrells are doing, wouldn't make sense in this context. Those were the 2 big things. There are 3 and 4, there's 2 other things that are minor points of refinement, but just like what I thought was in one episode was really in the next episode. But they're so near each other that's not really a problem. It's not losing screen time. Third point is, well, you guys think this big, for me it's not. It's Blood and Cheese, we have confirmed, happens as the final scene of episode 1. And it'll break the internet. Now, I've been saying this whole time, I'm 90% sure this is the first scene of episode 2, based on filming sheets I saw, but I guess the difference between the sheets they give out for exterior scenes versus interior scenes, like the last exterior scene is that shot we have in promos now of Daemon sneaking into King's Landing on a fishing boat to hire them. So that's why I thought it was the last scene of episode 1, but I guess they use different call sheets for interior scenes. So, but I said there's a small chance it's the beginning of, I said it's most likely the beginning of episode 2, small chance the end of episode 1. I didn't play the odds right on that. Turns out it is the end of episode 1. But you see, this has a very minor impact, because either way, the bulk of episode 2 is dominated by everyone's reactions to Blood and Cheese. So it just, if you were binging this in order on a streamer, it's the very next scene you watch anyway. Of course, watching it live, we have to wait a week, but in terms of the overall season structure and the amount of time devoted to that storyline, it doesn't really make that big of a difference. But okay, it is the final scene of episode 1. And another point I'm refining here, point 4 here, is it is now pretty clear that Daemon does not take Harrenhal in episode 1. Pretty sure he does it late in episode 2, before Cargill Bowl, but late episode 2. Which would make a lot more sense. This is better than we thought he'd be zipping back and forth between Dragonstone and Harrenhal. Which isn't that bad. Harrenhal is actually about as far northwest of Dragonstone as King's Landing is southwest, but still. We think it's Blood and Cheese happens at the end of episode 1. Multiple reviewers have said Rhaenyra and Daemon get into a big argument over Blood and Cheese early in episode 2, which we see when Daemon is angry in the trailers. And apparently he storms out, then takes Harrenhal by the end of the episode. And again, fuzzy edges, there's a chance it's the beginning of episode 3 or near the beginning of episode 3, but I doubt that. Because it's a short sequence, he lands and takes it bloodlessly. Either way, though, like, we might have a quick scene of him taking Harrenhal, but then they spend the rest of episode 3 introducing in more depth the people at Harrenhal. This is Simon Strong in more detail. Alice Rivers might only appear on screen for the first time in episode 3, because if the scene of him taking Harrenhal is short and doesn't involve her. And it makes more sense that they introduce her then, that they say he takes a minor wound taking the castle or something, so that she's treating it. Other reviewers have said Alice Rivers does a ton of magic stuff in episode 3. So that's all good. So that's what we're looking at now. And this is just refinement of, okay, it's really the next episode. On the other hand, the advanced reviews did confirm 2 rumors in my first outline to be entirely accurate. Yes, Cargill Bowl is officially the very last scene of episode 2. Confirm that. Very shocking, very intense. And also it makes more sense that Daemon would be gone by the end of episode 2 to explain how did the Cargills get there without him reacting, and Rhaenyra's just trapped there. Next thing that was confirmed is that the Battle of Burning Mill is in fact in episode 3, as we had heard, and based on what director was doing those scenes. But the advanced reviews have specified it's actually the very first scene of episode 3. It opens on that. Though the reviews also specified that there is no burning mill, but it is a battle between the Blackwoods and Brackens, and they liked it, but they said it's mostly off-screen. That there is a big scene of you see the Blackwoods and Brackens confronting each other in a field, it spirals, they're ready to start fighting, the bloodshed starts, and then it quickly cuts to there's a field full of dead corpses. So part of this is they're saving budget. They're also showing how devastating and unglorious war really is, while at the same time saving budget for the glorious Battle of Rook's Rest. But, Game of Thrones seasons 1 and 2 did that pretty effectively. We see the build-up to Whispering Wood, Green Fork, Oxcross. The battle is fun, but what matters in this kind of show more is the politics and the planning, that they will have, given a choice between random shot of guys with no character descriptions hitting each other, or dialogue scenes of Blackwoods and Brackens insulting each other, drawing swords, and then they cut away and just say a battle happened. The characterization and war planning matters more than just stuntmen hitting each other, to me. So it's in it as an event in the show, and I think in terms of narrative, not action, in terms of narrative, the reviewers said they gave it a pretty decent amount of narrative time, but it's just more focused on the lead-up. And that, yes, there's a battle. These guys pick different sides, and they're fighting each other. The war officially begins in episode 3. Harrenhal falls without a fight. The first field battle is episode 3, Blackwood versus Bracken. And yeah, some of the book Blackwood characters are not introduced. I didn't think they would be. Like, when the Battle of the Lakeshore stuff comes in Season 3, they'll probably retroactively mention, oh yeah, I was at Burning Mill, my father died. And Black Alley could be in next season. It's just you wouldn't expect time constraints to be in here. But we already thought Blackwoods versus Brackens is Episode 3, which makes sense because of the double loss of Harrenhal, and then the loss of the Riverlands is what makes Aegon decide we really need to hit the Crown Lands and Duskendale and Rook's Rest soon to get a victory, which we know happens in Episode 4. I'm going to split off my episode-by-episode rundown of this. I'm sorry I had to do this audio only. I will link you to the text post I made in the Westeros.org forums, which I'm just reading off because it's in a matter of hours.